Good evening. My name is Namaha Mazoomdar, and today I shall share with you my process of creating my debut production. It was a long journey, and this journey started about 2 years ago when a friend of mine narrated this very tragic incident that took place in a village in Pondicherry. There was a family where 4 happily married women turned into 4 grieving widows in a span of 1 year. A mother, her daughter, and 2 daughters-in-law. And they lost their husbands to different circumstances. And this incident disturbed me greatly. And I wondered that have these wives lost just their husbands? Or have they lost something more? As a society, we impose rules on their clothing, their food, their looks, and so forth. We practically punish them for circumstances they have no control over. So much later, one day, my Odissi teacher, Daksha ji, said, "Ke Namaha, tum itna kuch seekh ke aayi ho, do something. You've learned so much, so do something." And I grabbed the opportunity to explore this incident as the starting point of my work. And so my dad suggested the title, Hark, Can You Hear the Widows? Hark means to listen attentively. I am primarily a dancer and not an actor, because dancers dance, actors act. This was my simplified understanding. But when I went to Singapore for my theatre training and I was exposed to all the traditional theatre forms, I realized no one made this naive distinction. So when I was creating Hark, I wanted to gap this bridge and create a bridge between dance and theatre. And I wanted to experiment with classically trained dancer and throw them all the challenges that I have personally gone through. And I was really lucky that my dance colleagues agreed to come on board because they are professional Odissi dancers and were willing to participate in this new process of creation. Keeping the theme of today's evening, my process began with introspection. It formed the basis of my work because this space allows the actor to empathize with the character. And it is not an easy process. Even as a student, I thought it was extremely challenging, but very liberating at the same time. It was interesting to see how the different bodies would react to the same theme, but very differently. And I would often find myself telling the dancers, don't perform, feel it, don't act it, be it. And the mind also plays a very crucial role because you have to stay focused and be aware of everything and be attentive. Because at any point of time in the process, if you think, oh God, my trains are going to be so crowded when I go home, gone. The process is dead and you have to start all over again. At this point, I would want to share the views of 2 of my dancers and share a small clip of one of our rehearsals.
Namaskar, I'm Naruto and I was a part of this very sensitive production called Hark. As a classical dancer, of course it was a wonderful experience exploring the possibilities of movement using the same grammar of, the body movement, gestures, exploring the same sentiment, but in a very different format. Very different than what we do in classical dance and different in what we did in this production. So it was a wonderful experience, a lot of learning for me, because there were times where I thought I could do things using hastas and expressions and that the things that we do through classical dance, but how I could use doing everything minimal, but yet use the body in a particular way to explore that sentiment. So yes, it was a great learning experience to work for this production Hark.
This production completely changed my perspective towards dance and theatre. It gave me a lot of confidence, I can say, and allowed me to think on my own as an individual character and made my focus quite clear. There were no judgmental reactions or decisions as to what is right or what is wrong. The director used to say, just do what you feel like doing. And I think that opened up my individual character in person. And it was altogether a different experience, and I enjoyed the entire process with my peers, and we worked for about more than 4 months, and it was an amazing experience.
I'll just share a clip of one of our early rehearsal days. Hark is a piece which was created by everybody who was a part of it. The exploration of the external space took me several stages. As a theatre practitioner, the concept of less is more appealed to me. The idea of minimalism inspired me, and the beauty of silence fascinated me. And that is the treatment I wanted to bring in this production. So, imagination became our strongest tool. As an ensemble, we had to come together and imagine and define our home in this external space and collectively believe in it. I'll share another clip of that. The lights and sets were designed by my dramaturg Ram, keeping the minimalist approach in mind. My idea was to use it sparingly, just enough to help me create the mood and the ambience. But with respect to sets, I was very sure I didn't want any. I wanted it to be a bare space. But the place that we used to rehearse in is not a bare space. The walls were filled with photo frames of legendary artists who belong to the 19th century or even earlier. And one day my dramaturg made this comment of how these people have been framed who belong to the past. And I thought that's what we do. We frame the person we lose. And I wondered what connection or what meaning that would have with these women. The fact that their past was framed, their loss was framed, perhaps their joys had some connection with the frames. And so the idea of frames deeply resonated with me, and I decided to have a set of frames. Music was pretty much like this slide. I knew I needed music, but we had to create it from blankness. To me, the music of Hark was not about melody, but to create a soundscape. I wanted to use a spectrum of percussive sounds, a string instrument. My first choice was Esraj, but I was told nobody played in Bombay. And so my next choice was a sarod. Eventually, I had two great musicians in my team. Vaibhav Vavikar was on percussion and Hriday Desai on sarod. And I invited them too in a space to feel and play. I wanted them to allow the narrative to inspire them, to elaborate on minimalism and to indulge in silence. We have had 5 shows of Hark, and each time the space would vary depending on the stage configuration. My attempt was to respond to these different spaces and the physical attributes of it and integrate it in our performance. So, no two performances would actually be the same, be it the NCPA or an open space or an amphitheater. I'd like to share the views of my last performer here.
When Namaha first narrated Hark, my initial reaction was, wow, that's really dark. The entire process for me was spiritual, both at a physical and emotional level. If I had to describe my journey in Hark, I would describe it as being in concentric circles, where the lines were very clearly demarcated and fluid at the same time. Physically, I developed a lot of body awareness, learned to respond to other bodies, props, adapt to different stage setups, audiences. Emotionally, I learned to identify specific emotions and feelings and manifest them in definite actions and expressions. For me, Hark is a canvas where each of us is given the same palette of colors, but the end result is a familiar picture in structure and form, but the colors which emerge are different each time.
Honestly, I can go on speaking about Hark the whole day. But to sum it up, I'd like to say that Hark was an attempt to showcase something meaningful and to create a space to evoke and provoke. May I request you all to stay with me for a little while longer while I end this presentation for today. Thank you.